The afternoon sun beat down on the clean, polished walkways of Westview Shopping Center. 16-year-old Jasmine Williams found a shady spot on a wooden bench outside the main entrance, grateful for the break from the heat. She had just finished her 4-hour shift at the nearby animal shelter where she volunteered every Saturday, walking dogs and cleaning cages. Today, the shelter director had let everyone go early after a surprise donation of supplies had arrived, leaving Jasmine with almost 40 minutes before her mom was scheduled to pick her up. At least it's nice out here, she thought to herself as she pulled her worn backpack closer and fished out her headphones. The shopping center was busy but not crowded, weekend shoppers strolling between high-end boutiques and specialty stores with colorful bags dangling from their arms. Jasmine scrolled through her playlist and settled on some music, leaning back against the bench. She didn't notice Harold Kensington watching her from the property management office window. At 57, Harold had worked as the center's property manager for almost 12 years. He took pride in keeping the shopping center the right kind of place, as he often told his wife. He squinted at Jasmine through the blinds, noting her casual clothes, just jeans and a plain blue t-shirt, and the scuffed backpack at her side. That girl has been sitting there for at least 20 minutes, he muttered to himself, checking his watch. Not shopping, not meeting anyone, just sitting. He straightened his tie and decided to investigate. Jasmine was lost in her music when a shadow fell across her. She looked up to see a middle-aged man in dress pants and a button-up shirt standing over her, his mouth moving. She quickly pulled off her headphones. "Sorry, what was that?" she asked politely. "I said, can I help you find something?" Harold's voice was professionally pleasant, but his eyes were cold and assessing. "No, thank you. I'm just waiting for my mom to pick me up," Jasmine explained with a small smile. Harold nodded slowly, not returning her smile. "The thing is, these benches are for shoppers who need a rest, not for hanging around all afternoon." Jasmine sat up straighter. "I just finished volunteering at the animal shelter next door. My mom's coming in," she checked her phone, "about 30 minutes. Is it okay if I wait here? It's really hot to walk home." "The animal shelter?" Harold's eyebrows raised slightly, doubt clear in his expression. "And your mother can't come any sooner." "She's at work. She's coming straight from there," Jasmine explained, feeling increasingly uncomfortable under his skeptical gaze. "I see." Harold paused, looking around at the upscale storefronts. "Well, perhaps you could wait inside one of the stores instead of just sitting out here." Jasmine glanced at the designer shops surrounding them. She knew from experience that browsing without buying often led to suspicious looks from staff. "I'll probably just stay here, if that's okay. I'm not bothering anyone." Harold pressed his lips together, clearly unsatisfied. "I'll check back in a few minutes," he said before walking away. True to his word, Harold returned twice over the next 15 minutes, each time with a new question. Did she need to use the phone to call someone else? Was she sure she was supposed to be picked up at this entrance? Perhaps she had the wrong shopping center altogether. Each time, Jasmine answered patiently, though her heart beat a little faster with each interaction. She'd experienced this kind of thing before, the suspicious questions that her white friends never seemed to get. After the third questioning, Harold retreated to his office. Through the window, Jasmine could see him pick up a phone, gesturing as he spoke. A cold feeling settled in her stomach. She knew exactly what was happening. Sure enough, less than 10 minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled into the parking lot, their lights flashing. Jasmine watched them arrive, her mouth going dry as the knot in her stomach tightened. She thought about texting her mom but hesitated. Her mom was in the middle of preparing for a big case. But as the officers stepped out of their vehicles and Harold emerged from his office with a satisfied expression, Jasmine knew she needed help. With shaking fingers, she pulled up her mom's contact and pressed call. What she didn't know was that this simple act of calling her mother was about to turn this ordinary case of racial profiling completely upside down. The sound of car doors slamming made Jasmine's heart jump in her chest. She watched as 2 police officers, a tall man with a crew cut and a shorter woman with her dark hair pulled back tightly, approached her bench. Harold Kensington trailed behind them, his arms crossed over his chest. "Afternoon, miss," the male officer said as they reached her. His name tag read Officer Davies. He had kind eyes that didn't match his serious expression. I'm Officer Davies, and this is Officer Rodriguez. Can we have a word with you? Jasmine nodded, slipping her phone into her pocket after sending a quick text to her mom. Police here at shopping center. Please hurry. We received a call about someone loitering in this area, Officer Rodriguez explained. Her voice was businesslike but not unkind. Have you been sitting here long? About 30 minutes, Jasmine replied, doing her best to keep her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. I finished my volunteer shift early at the animal shelter next door. I'm just waiting for my mom to pick me up. Harold stepped forward, clearing his throat. She's been here for nearly an hour, he corrected, exaggerating the time. Just sitting, watching people, not shopping. Several customers mentioned feeling uncomfortable. Jasmine blinked in surprise. That was a lie. Nobody had even glanced her way before Harold started checking on her. That's not true, she said, looking directly at the officers. I've just been listening to music and waiting. I haven't bothered anyone. Officer Davies looked between them, his expression thoughtful. Do you have ID with you, miss? Jasmine nodded, reaching for her school ID in her backpack. As she handed it over, she noticed a small group of shoppers had stopped to watch the scene unfold. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. This was exactly the kind of attention she had always tried to avoid. Jasmine Williams, Officer Davies read aloud. Westside High School. He looked up at her. You said your mother is coming to pick you up? When is she expected? She should be here in about 15 minutes, Jasmine replied, checking the time on her phone. She's coming straight from work. And where does your mother work? Officer Rodriguez asked, notepad in hand. Before Jasmine could answer, Harold interjected again. Look, this is a private property. We have rules against loitering. If she's not a customer, she shouldn't be using our facilities. Sir, we're handling this, Officer Rodriguez told him firmly, before turning back to Jasmine. Your mother's workplace. She works downtown at the federal courthouse, Jasmine said, choosing her words carefully. Years of her mother's advice echoed in her head. Stay calm. Be respectful, but know your rights. Don't volunteer too much information. Harold made a dismissive noise. The courthouse has a lot of employees. Janitors, security guards, all sorts. Jasmine felt a flash of anger, but bit her tongue. The assumptions in his tone were crystal clear. Officer Davies handed back her ID. Look, there seems to be a misunderstanding here. Miss Williams, is there perhaps somewhere else you could wait for your mother? Inside one of the stores, maybe? Why should I have to move? Jasmine asked, her voice finally betraying her frustration. I'm not doing anything wrong. This is a public bench. Actually, it's private property, Harold repeated smugly. And as the property manager, I have the right to ask non-customers to leave. People were definitely staring now. An older woman with shopping bags had stopped completely, watching the scene with concerned eyes. A teenage boy around Jasmine's age was filming with his phone from a distance. Jasmine felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened to her, but it never got easier. She picked up her phone again. I'm calling my mom, she said, her voice shaking slightly despite her efforts to control it. She'll be here soon, and she can sort this out. Officer Rodriguez nodded, seeming relieved at the suggestion. Officer Davies moved a few steps away, speaking quietly into his radio. Harold stood his ground, checking his watch impatiently. We don't have all day for this. Either she needs to make a purchase or move along. As Jasmine heard the phone ringing, she tried to steady her breathing. Her mother picked up on the third ring. Mom, she said, her voice wavering. There are police officers here at the shopping center. Mr. Kensington called them because he thinks I'm loitering. Can you come now? She listened for a moment, then looked up at the officers. She's on her way. She'll be here in 5 minutes. What nobody at the shopping center realized was exactly who was about to arrive and how dramatically things were about to change. Vanessa Williams was in the middle of spreading documents across the conference table when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the caller ID and felt a small wave of concern. Jasmine rarely called during the day, preferring to text instead. Something must be wrong. Excuse me, she said to her assistant Thomas, who was organizing case files beside her. I need to take this. It's my daughter. Stepping away from the table, Vanessa answered the call. Jasmine, is everything okay? As her daughter's shaky voice came through the phone, explaining about the police and the property manager, Vanessa felt her body tense. The familiar mixture of fear and anger churned in her stomach, the same feeling she had countless times since Jasmine was born. It was the feeling of a black mother hearing that her child was in a potentially dangerous situation for simply existing in a space. "Stay exactly where you are," Vanessa instructed, her voice calm despite the storm brewing inside her. "Don't argue with them, but don't let them pressure you into leaving. I'm on my way. 5 minutes, tops." She ended the call and turned to Thomas, who had looked up from his work with concern. "I need to go. My daughter's being harassed at Westview Shopping Center. Some property manager called the police on her for waiting on a bench." Thomas's eyes widened slightly. He'd worked with Vanessa long enough to understand exactly what was happening. "Go. I'll reschedule the afternoon briefing." Vanessa quickly gathered her belongings, but paused at the door. "Actually, wait. Could you pull the file on discriminatory business practices we worked on last year? And get me the contact information for the ownership group of Westview Shopping Center?" Thomas nodded, already reaching for his tablet. "On it. And Vanessa, give him hell." A grim smile crossed Vanessa's face as she grabbed her purse and keys. "That's Deputy Chief Federal Prosecutor give him hell, thank you very much." The drive to the shopping center took approximately 7 minutes, but it felt much longer to Vanessa. As she navigated through traffic, her mind raced between worry for her daughter and preparation for what she needed to say and do. At a red light, she reached into her glove compartment and pulled out her federal prosecutor badge on its lanyard, slipping it around her neck. Sometimes, in America, credentials were the difference between being heard and being ignored, between safety and danger. She thought about all the conversations she'd had with Jasmine over the years, the careful instructions on how to behave around authority figures, what to say, what not to say. The knowledge that her daughter had to be extra careful, extra polite, extra everything, just to be treated with basic respect. The unfairness of it all made her grip the steering wheel tighter. "Not today," she whispered to herself as she pulled into the shopping center parking lot. "Not to my daughter." From a distance, she could see the scene, 2 police cruisers, their lights still flashing. A small crowd had gathered around a bench where Jasmine sat, flanked by officers. A middle-aged white man in a dress shirt stood nearby, gesturing animatedly. Vanessa parked her car and took a deep breath. In court, she was known for her composure, her ability to remain level-headed even in the most heated moments. Those skills would be crucial now. She couldn't let emotion overtake reason, no matter how justified her anger might be. As she stepped out of her car, she straightened her blazer and checked that her badge was clearly visible. Then she walked toward the group with measured steps, her courthouse heels clicking purposefully against the pavement. "Mom," Jasmine called out when she spotted her, relief washing over her face. Vanessa gave her daughter a reassuring nod before turning her attention to the officers. She noted their name tags, their badge numbers, their body language. Everything was evidence if it needed to be. "Good afternoon, officers," she said, her voice carrying the same authority it did in federal court. "I'm Deputy Chief Federal Prosecutor Vanessa Williams." She gestured toward Jasmine. "And this is my daughter you're questioning. May I ask what seems to be the problem here?" Harold Kensington shifted his weight from one foot to the other, suddenly finding his shiny leather shoes fascinating. I made the call," he admitted, his previous confidence evaporating under Vanessa's steady gaze. Vanessa nodded once, her expression unchanged. She turned to Jasmine, softening her voice. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" "I'm fine, Mom," Jasmine said, though the slight tremble in her voice suggested otherwise. Vanessa placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder before addressing the officers again. "Sir, Officers Davies and Rodriguez, if I understand correctly, my daughter was sitting on this bench, waiting for me to pick her up after volunteering at the animal shelter, and somehow this constituted a situation requiring 2 police cruisers." Officer Rodriguez glanced at her partner, then back at Vanessa. "Ma'am, we respond to all calls we receive. Mr. Kensington reported someone loitering and making customers uncomfortable." "Making customers uncomfortable," Vanessa repeated, the words hanging in the air. She looked around at the small crowd that had gathered. "Would any of you shoppers like to step forward and explain how my 16-year-old daughter made you uncomfortable by sitting quietly on a bench?" No one moved. A few people looked away, embarrassed. "That's what I thought," Vanessa said. She turned back to Harold. "Mr. Kensington, is there a posted policy against waiting on these benches? A time limit, perhaps? A purchasing requirement for bench sitting?" Harold's face had gone from pale to flushed. "It's private property," he insisted, though his voice had lost its authoritative edge. "We have the right to monitor who uses our facilities." "Indeed you do," Vanessa agreed, her tone measured. "And I'm curious about your monitoring patterns. Do you regularly call the police on teenagers waiting for their parents? Or is there something specific about my daughter that prompted this response?" The question hung in the air, its implication clear to everyone present. Officer Davies cleared his throat. "Ms. Williams, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. We're just doing our job responding to calls." "I understand that, Officer Davies," Vanessa interrupted, her voice firm but not hostile. "And I respect the difficult position you're in. But I'd like to understand exactly what happened before you arrived." She turned her attention back to Harold. "Mr. Kensington, when you approached my daughter, what exactly did she tell you?" Harold's mouth opened and closed before he found his words. "She said she was waiting for her mother. But she'd been here for an extended period, and we've had issues with shoplifting in the past." "Shoplifting?" Vanessa's eyebrow raised. "Did you see my daughter enter any stores? Did you witness her taking anything? Do you have any evidence whatsoever connecting her to any previous theft?" "Well, no, but—" "So to be clear," Vanessa continued, "a teenager sitting on a bench who told you she was waiting for her parent, who showed you her school ID when asked, who was not causing any disturbance, was deemed suspicious enough to warrant police intervention. Is that correct?" A woman in the small crowd of onlookers whispered something to her companion. A teenage boy was still recording the scene on his phone, capturing everything. Harold straightened his tie, trying to regain his composure. "Ms. Williams, with all due respect, we take security seriously here at Westview Shopping Center. I was simply following protocol for suspicious individuals." "And what makes an individual suspicious, Mr. Kensington?" Vanessa asked, her voice deceptively calm. "I'm genuinely curious about this protocol." Before Harold could respond, Officer Rodriguez stepped forward. "Ms. Williams, perhaps we could move this conversation somewhere more private." "I understand your concerns, but—" "With respect, Officer Rodriguez, I prefer to have this conversation right here," Vanessa replied. "My daughter was publicly questioned and embarrassed. I see no reason why the resolution should happen behind closed doors." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small notepad and pen. "Now, Mr. Kensington, I'd like your full name and position, as well as the contact information for your supervisor and the shopping center's management company." Harold hesitated, looking desperately toward the officers as if they might rescue him from this situation. "It's for my records," Vanessa added with a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure someone with your dedication to protocol can appreciate thorough documentation." Officer Davies suppressed what might have been a smile. "Ma'am, we can see there's no issue here. Your daughter is free to go with you." "Thank you, officer," Vanessa replied, not taking her eyes off Harold. "But I'm still waiting for Mr. Kensington's information." Harold's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Harold J. Kensington, property manager for Westview Shopping Center. My supervisor is Richard Taylor, director of operations for Summit Property Management." Vanessa wrote this down carefully before looking up again. "And the number where Mr. Taylor can be reached." As Harold reluctantly provided the contact information, Jasmine gathered her backpack and stood up, moving closer to her mother. The expression on her face was a mixture of embarrassment and awe. She'd seen her mother in professional mode before, but never like this, never defending her with such controlled precision. When Vanessa finished writing, she thanked Harold with perfect politeness. Then she turned to the officers. "Thank you for your time today, Officers Davies and Rodriguez. Badge numbers 5384 and 6219, correct?" At their surprised nods, she continued, "I'd appreciate a copy of the incident report when it's filed." Taking Jasmine's hand, Vanessa began walking toward her car, her head held high. The crowd parted for them, a few people nodding in silent support. "Mom," Jasmine whispered when they were a few steps away. "That was—" "Not over yet," Vanessa replied quietly. but we're going to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." As Vanessa and Jasmine reached the car, Officer Rodriguez jogged up behind them. "Ms. Williams, wait," she called. Vanessa turned, her expression guarded. The officer lowered her voice. "Look, I want to apologize. We responded to the call as protocol requires, but—" She glanced back at Harold, who was now being spoken to by Officer Davies. Well, it became clear pretty quickly what was really happening here. Vanessa studied the officer's face, searching for sincerity. "Then why continue questioning my daughter?" Officer Rodriguez sighed. "Honestly, we were trying to de-escalate. Mr. Kensington was insistent, and sometimes it's easier to go through the motions than argue with someone like that on the spot." She shook her head. "It's not right, I know, but that's what happened." "I appreciate your honesty," Vanessa said after a moment, "but you should know that going through the motions has real consequences for people like my daughter." The officer nodded. "I know. And I'm sorry." She handed Vanessa a card. "My direct number in case you need anything else." As Officer Rodriguez walked away, Jasmine leaned against the car. "Can we just go home now?" Vanessa checked her watch. "Actually, no. Give me 5 more minutes." She squeezed her daughter's hand. "This won't happen again. Not here, not to you, not to anyone if I can help it." Before Jasmine could protest, Vanessa was walking back toward the bench where Harold still stood with Officer Davies. The small crowd of onlookers had mostly dispersed, but a few remained, watching the drama unfold. "Mr. Kensington," Vanessa called as she approached. "I have a few more questions." Harold's face, which had begun to regain some color, paled again. "Ms. Williams, I think we've said all that needs to be said. I was doing my job." "Your job," Vanessa repeated, stopping a few feet away from him. "I'd like to understand exactly what that job entails. How many people have you called the police on this month?" Harold blinked rapidly. "I don't keep count, but we have standards here." "Standards," Vanessa echoed. "And what are those standards based on exactly?" "Because my daughter was doing nothing wrong. She was sitting quietly, waiting for her ride, just like dozens of other people probably do every day." "Look, it wasn't just about sitting," Harold said defensively. "She was here for a long time, and she looked out of place." "Out of place," Vanessa repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "Would you care to explain what that means?" Officer Davies, sensing the tension, took a small step back but remained within earshot. Harold tugged at his collar. "I simply meant that she didn't appear to be shopping. This is a high-end shopping center, and we need to maintain a certain environment for our customers." "An environment," Vanessa said, nodding slowly. "And what exactly does that environment look like, Mr. Kensington? Who belongs in that environment and who doesn't?" "That's not what I—" "Because my daughter, straight-A student volunteer, raised to be respectful and law-abiding, somehow didn't fit your idea of who belongs here. And I'm trying very hard to understand why that might be." A middle-aged woman who had been watching stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said. "I shop here every weekend, and I've seen that man," she pointed at Harold, "approach young people of color multiple times, but I've never once seen him question the white teenagers who hang out by the fountain." Harold's face flushed. "That's not true. I treat everyone equally." "Do you?" Vanessa asked. "Because I'm a federal prosecutor, Mr. Kensington. I deal with evidence and patterns. And right now, the evidence suggests a troubling pattern." She took a step closer to him. "My daughter volunteers at that animal shelter every Saturday. She sits on this bench every Saturday. And suddenly today, she's a threat." Harold sputtered. "I wasn't even working last Saturday." "So this is your first day noticing her," Vanessa said. "Interesting." Officer Davies cleared his throat. "Ms. Williams, I believe we've established there was no legitimate reason for police involvement here today." "Yes, we have," Vanessa agreed, not taking her eyes off Harold. "And I appreciate that, officer. But there's a larger issue at play." She turned to face the officer directly. "How many calls like this do you respond to? How many times are police resources wasted because someone feels threatened by a black person simply existing in public space?" Officer Davies shifted uncomfortably. "More than I'd like to admit," he said quietly. Vanessa nodded. "That's what I thought." She turned back to Harold. "Mr. Kensington, I could file a formal complaint against you personally." I could initiate a discrimination lawsuit against the shopping center that would cost them far more than any supposed shoplifting you claim to be preventing. Harold swallowed hard. Are you threatening me? No, Vanessa said calmly. I'm informing you of potential consequences. But what I would prefer is change. Real, meaningful change in how you and this shopping center operate. She pulled out her business card and handed it to him. I'll be contacting your supervisor on Monday. I expect to have a conversation about anti-bias training for all staff here, and I'll be following up to ensure it happens. Harold took the card with trembling fingers. Mom? Jasmine called from a few yards away. Are we good? Vanessa looked at her daughter, brave, patient, dealing with a situation no child should have to face, and felt a surge of both pride and sorrow. Yes, honey, she called back. We're good. Then she looked back at Harold. For now. As she walked away, she heard Officer Davies say quietly to Harold, Sir, I strongly suggest you take her advice. Because if this becomes a legal matter, you're going to need a very good lawyer. The weekend passed in a blur of emotions for both Jasmine and Vanessa. They spent Saturday evening talking through what had happened, with Vanessa listening patiently as her daughter processed her feelings about the incident. I just don't understand why he had to call the police, Jasmine said as they sat at the kitchen table, cups of hot chocolate between them. I wasn't doing anything wrong. You weren't, Vanessa agreed, reaching across to squeeze her daughter's hand. And that's what makes this so frustrating. But you handled it beautifully, sweetheart. You stayed calm, you called me, you didn't let them intimidate you. Jasmine stayed into her mug. But what if you hadn't been a prosecutor? What if you were just, I don't know, a regular mom? Vanessa was quiet for a moment. A regular mom would have fought just as hard for you. Maybe with different tools, but just as hard. She sighed. But you're right. My job gave me an advantage in that situation, and that's exactly why we need to do something about this. Monday morning arrived, and Vanessa kept her promise. Before heading to court, she made 2 important phone calls from her office. The first was to Richard Taylor, Harold's supervisor at Summit Property Management. Mr. Taylor, thank you for taking my call, Vanessa began, her voice professional but firm. I'm Deputy Chief Federal Prosecutor Vanessa Williams, and I'm calling regarding an incident involving your employee, Harold Kensington, at the Westview Shopping Center this past Saturday. She detailed what had happened to Jasmine, carefully sticking to the facts without editorializing. As I see it, Mr. Taylor, this is a clear case of racial profiling that resulted in the unnecessary involvement of law enforcement. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Ms. Williams, I don't know what to say. This is very concerning. I agree, Vanessa replied, and I'm hoping we can find a constructive way forward. I've worked on several cases involving discriminatory business practices, and I've seen how these situations can escalate, both legally and in terms of public relations. She could almost hear Taylor shifting uncomfortably in his seat. What do you suggest? I'd like to see mandatory anti-bias training implemented for all staff at Westview Shopping Center. Not just a one-time seminar, but an ongoing program with follow-up and accountability measures. That would be a significant undertaking, Taylor hedged. Less significant than a discrimination lawsuit, Vanessa replied calmly, or the community boycott that might result if the video of Saturday's incident were to go viral. Video. Taylor's voice rose slightly. Yes, several bystanders were recording. Social media can be quite powerful these days. After another moment of silence, Taylor cleared his throat. I'll speak with our corporate office today. We take these matters very seriously, Ms. Williams. I'm glad to hear that, Vanessa said. I'll follow up with you next week to discuss the implementation timeline. A second call was to the police department, where she requested a meeting with the district commander. By that afternoon, she had an appointment scheduled for Wednesday. When Jasmine came home from school that day, Vanessa was waiting with news. So, I heard back from the shopping center management, she said as Jasmine dropped her backpack on the kitchen counter. They're implementing mandatory anti-bias training for all their staff across all their properties. Jasmine looked up in surprise. Really? Just like that? Vanessa smiled. Well, not just like that. I may have mentioned the multiple recordings of the incident and the possibility of negative publicity. Mom, Jasmine laughed despite herself. You threatened them? I simply outlined potential consequences, Vanessa corrected, her eyes twinkling. And there's more. Mr. Kensington has been reassigned to their office downtown. Administrative duties only, no more patrolling the shopping center. Jasmine's smile faded. Is that enough though? I mean, he still has his job. Vanessa sat down across from her daughter. It's a start. Firing him might feel satisfying, but it wouldn't address the bigger problem. This way, he's required to attend the training, and the company has to acknowledge there's an issue that needs fixing. She reached for Jasmine's hand. Change doesn't always happen all at once, sweetheart. Sometimes it's a process. Jasmine nodded slowly. I guess. What about the police? They just went along with it. That's next on my list, Vanessa assured her. I'm meeting with their commander on Wednesday. We're going to discuss how they respond to these types of calls and what kind of training their officers receive. She paused, studying her daughter's face. But there's something else I wanted to talk to you about. Mrs. Chen from your school called me today. Apparently, you mentioned the incident to her. Jasmine nodded. Yeah, in our social justice club meeting. She thought it might be good if you came to speak to the group about it, about how to handle situations like that. Vanessa felt a surge of pride. Even after what she'd been through, Jasmine was thinking about how to help others. I think that's a wonderful idea, she said. And maybe we could do more. What if we put together a Know Your Rights workshop for students? Something practical that gives them tools to handle difficult situations. Could we really do that? Jasmine asked, her eyes lighting up. Absolutely, Vanessa said. In fact, I think it's exactly what we should do. Turn what happened into something positive. As they began brainstorming ideas for the workshop, Vanessa felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The incident at the shopping center had been painful and infuriating, but it had also opened doors to create meaningful change, not just at Westview Shopping Center, but potentially for many young people in their community. Sometimes, she thought, watching her daughter enthusiastically outlining workshop topics, justice comes in unexpected ways. 3 weeks after the incident at Westview Shopping Center, Jasmine stood nervously at the edge of her school's auditorium, watching as students filed in for the first Know Your Rights workshop. The turnout was far bigger than she'd expected, nearly 100 students, plus several teachers and even Principal Winters. There's so many people, she whispered to her friend Tanya, who had helped organize the event. What if they get bored? Tanya squeezed her arm reassuringly. Are you kidding? Your mom is a legend. Everyone wants to hear what she has to say. Plus, your story is going viral. That was true, though it still felt surreal to Jasmine. The video of the confrontation, filmed by a shopper's teenage son, had indeed made its way to social media. Within days, it had been viewed over 50,000 times, shared across multiple platforms, and picked up by local news stations. Suddenly, people Jasmine had never met were stopping her in hallways to share their own stories of being profiled or harassed. It was overwhelming, but also oddly empowering. For the first time, Jasmine felt like her voice, and the voices of others like her, was being heard. At exactly 3:30, Vanessa walked onto the stage, dressed in a casual blazer rather than her formal courtroom attire. She adjusted the microphone and smiled at the audience. Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Vanessa Williams, Jasmine's mom. She paused, and a few students chuckled at the deliberate understatement. And yes, I'm also a federal prosecutor, but today I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here as a parent, a community member, and someone who believes that knowledge is power. She gestured toward the side of the stage. Jasmine, would you join me? Jasmine's heart hammered in her chest as she walked up the steps to stand beside her mother. She hadn't planned on speaking, but the encouraging nod from Vanessa gave her courage. Hi, she began awkwardly, leaning toward the microphone. Most of you probably know what happened to me at the shopping center a few weeks ago. But what you might not know is how helpless I felt in that moment. Even though I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong, I didn't know exactly what my rights were or how to protect myself. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. That's why we're doing this workshop today, so that if you ever find yourself in a situation like that, you'll know what to do and what not to do. As Jasmine stepped back, the audience applauded, and she felt a rush of pride. This was bigger than just her experience now. It was about making sure others had tools she hadn't. Vanessa took over, explaining in clear, simple terms what rights young people had when approached by security guards, store employees, or police officers. She covered what they were legally required to share and what they could respectfully decline to answer. Most importantly, she emphasized safety. Your primary goal is always to get home safely, she stressed. Sometimes that means complying in the moment and addressing injustice afterward. Your life and well-being matter most. Officer Rodriguez, who had surprised them all by volunteering to participate, spoke next about what police procedures should look like and what constituted overreach. Her honesty about the challenges within law enforcement was refreshing, earning her respect from the audience. We're trained to respond to calls, she explained. But we also need to use judgment. What happened to Jasmine shouldn't have happened, and we're working on better protocols for these situations. Afterward, during the Q&A session, a quiet freshman raised her hand. What happened to that manager guy, Harold? Vanessa exchanged a glance with Jasmine before answering. Mr. Kensington completed the first phase of anti-bias training last week. He's still working in an administrative role, away from direct customer interaction. What she didn't mention was the letter they had received yesterday, a handwritten apology from Harold, expressing genuine remorse for his actions and thanking them for pushing for training rather than his termination. It had been unexpected and seemed sincere, though Jasmine was still processing how she felt about it. As the workshop ended and students gathered around to ask more questions, a local reporter approached them. Ms. Williams, would you and Jasmine be willing to share your story for a feature article? We're doing a series on community responses to racial profiling. Vanessa looked at Jasmine questioningly, leaving the decision to her. Yes, Jasmine said after a moment's thought. I think it's important for people to hear what happened and what we're doing about it. The following weekend, their story appeared on the front page of the local newspaper, alongside information about the workshop series they were planning to take to other schools in the district. The article detailed not just the incident, but the constructive response, the training program at the shopping center, the new police protocols being developed with Vanessa's input, and the workshops empowering young people. Phone calls and emails poured in from parents, educators, and community organizers asking how they could implement similar programs. What had started as a terrible afternoon had somehow grown into a movement for positive change. That Sunday, as Jasmine and Vanessa sat at their kitchen table reading yet another message from a grateful parent, Jasmine looked up at her mother. Do you think we're making a difference? Really? Vanessa set down her coffee mug. I know we are. Change happens one conversation, one workshop, one policy at a time. It's not always fast, but it's real. She reached across the table to hold her daughter's hand. And you know what? I couldn't be prouder of how you've handled all this. You turned something painful into something powerful. Jasmine smiled, squeezing her mother's hand. Sometimes life's worst moments led to unexpected opportunities to grow, to teach, and to create the change you wanted to see in the world.